British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is urging world leaders to keep up the pressure on Russia at a virtual summit on Ukraine's future. Starmer is leading the so-called Coalition of the Willing with France. It aims to secure lasting peace in Ukraine. Starmer is seeking security guarantees for Ukraine from the 25 leaders in attendance. He also wants to establish a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire with Russia. Starmer told his counterparts that Russia's President Putin is trying to delay peace. Truce talks are being led by the US, which is not attending this virtual summit. Starmer called on world leaders to make concrete commitments to help Ukraine.
We have to keep pushing ahead, pushing forward and preparing for peace, and a peace that will be secure and that will last. And I think that means strengthening Ukraine so they can defend themselves, and strengthening obviously in terms of military capability, in terms of funding, in terms of the provision of further support from all of us to Ukraine. Secondly, being prepared to defend any deal ourselves through a coalition of the willing.
Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer speaking there. And let's now bring in Domitilla Sagramoso. She's a senior lecturer in security and development at King's College London. Domitilla, what do you make of this attempt to provide long-term support to Ukraine?
I think it is a very positive development. Europeans understood over the past weeks that it was very important to raise the stakes and provide significant support to Ukraine, military support in particular. And we are seeing countries such as the United Kingdom promising to deliver about 5.3 billion euros. Germany is also talking about 3 billion euros. There is also a plan, an idea or a project developed by the European Commission to develop a plan of support for 2025 of about sort of 20 billion euros up to potentially 40 billion euros. And that would also include 2 million rounds of ammunition. So I think it is very important and very interesting that European countries are really trying to cover for the deficiencies that might occur if the United States decides not to provide the significant support. One problem is that Europeans are still dependent on the United States, and Ukraine is still dependent very much on intelligence, reconnaissance, and also, of course, air defense systems.
Now, the United States is not part of this meeting, but can this coalition of the willing, as Starmer called it, actually offer military support to Ukraine without help from the US? I mean, significant military help.
I think it can start providing additional ammunition, artillery. This is very important, long-range missiles. I think now we see the French providing their fighter jets Mirage to replace the F-16. So I think there is a possibility. Of course, ideally, it should be done in coordination with the United States because, as I said, the United States provides really crucial intelligence, communications, reconnaissance, and this remains fundamental. We've seen the impact of the lack of support to Ukraine a couple of days ago in Kursk, where the Ukrainians lost a lot of terrain, exactly at the time when the United States had halted its provision of support and intelligence. So I think the Europeans will have to invest a lot more on these areas of satellite reconnaissance, intelligence, and also air defense to protect Ukrainian cities, which are always constantly now under bombardment, and it's often forgotten. It's not just Kiev, but many other cities like Kharkiv, Odessa, Kramatorsk. There are many cities along the front line are also constantly under threat of massive bombardment.
In your assessment, very briefly, what happens next as the US is trying to reach a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, I think what is very important, if we go back to the points that were raised by Keir Starmer, is a question of what will be the security guarantees that Ukraine is going to receive. We know that the Russians are very reluctant and have said they will not accept any NATO deployment in Ukraine or even of NATO member states independently in Ukraine. But of course, the French and the Brits are leading an effort to consider the deployment potentially of what we call not necessarily only peacekeeping forces, but forces of support to Ukraine. And I think here is one of the real challenges that we face is what kind of security guarantees are going to be provided. To what extent are we going to make sure that Ukraine is not forced to demilitarize, which is also one of the requests of the Kremlin, that Ukraine stops receiving Western military support and that it doesn't continue with mobilization of its forces. So I think there are many, many challenges yet that go beyond the immediate ceasefire agreement. And as we know, Putin has been very reluctant to fully agree with the agreement. And is introducing its own conditions. So we are really at very early stages still of what is going to happen in Ukraine.
Domitilla Sagramoso there from King's College London. Thank you.